Hi, this is Misha, and I wanted to talk about one of only two single-engine, single-warp nacelle craft we've seen in Star Trek, at least in official frontline premier canon. Now, I know there's the Hermes and the Saladin. In fact, I had little models of those as a kid from the 80s, and that was a cool ship, and I actually hope Eagle Moss maybe does one of those one day. And they were sort of canon, because they were on a display or two now and again, but yeah, we never really saw one in flight. So this is the U.S.S. Kelvin, featured in JJ's 2009 reboot. We really don't know officially the class name, but it's been posited that the Kelvin was not a prototype, but kind of a first of its class. Therefore, it's probably the U.S.S. Kelvin as part of the Kelvin class. Also, side canon has suggested Iowa or Einstein class. So take your pick, but since it's the only ship of his class we've seen on screen, and we know its name is Kelvin, we'll go with Kelvin class until proven otherwise. This vessel was launched in 2225, and in 2233, we know that George Kirk, a lieutenant commander, was its first officer, and in the real timeline, the prime timeline, nothing much happened. He completed his tour of duty and went back to Iowa, where he had a family and all that. Of course, in the JJ verse, the ship was attacked without provocation by a nutty bald Romulan, and yeah. And also, for some reason, it was crammed with 800 people in that reality, which is nuts. This ship is designed by the model makers, and as would fit in with the regular timeline, would have a crew of maybe 200. Keep in mind that the original crew count for the Enterprise when it was launched in 2245 was a little over 200, as attested to by Christopher Pike in The Cage. So we can say this had a crew of maybe 200. And we can grant that this might have been a little bit longer than the Enterprise. Call it 315 meters. 315 meters. Because we have this really long nacelle sticking out the back. So livable space would pretty much be the saucer. And this nacelle sticking out a bit further would explain why it's just a smidgen longer than the later Constitution. This would be a survey craft, also possibly a colony craft or settlement craft or transport, and a patrol craft, but generally speaking, survey. The idea behind the one nacelle seems to be efficiency. Instead of having two, we have one big one. We do have a Bassard collector. In the JJ verse, it's blue, but we can just kind of assume that normally it'd be the typical red. Remember, they tried blue for a bit. Also, in the JJ verse, for some reason, the back here is lit up on the nacelle, which is just, anyway. We don't need to get into that. It's certainly not a source of thrust unless somehow the back of the nacelle does something different than normal we can expect. We do have standard impulse engines above the nacelle, so it's not impulse. That said, if you look at the rear of the nacelle and like the cage Enterprise, it looks different than what we're commonly used to anyway. So yeah, we have one large nacelle instead of two smaller ones. And then we have this engineering section up above, which seems to house the deflector. Again, I believe it is blue, is it not? Which is just weird. Should be the reddish, bronzous, coppery, but it at least has the right shape. So our deflector is nicely housed up here. And then behind that, we've got a nice ample shuttle bay, which is great for a survey or possibly colony support or colonization craft. So that would pretty much take up this hole between the navigation deflector and the shuttle bay. We could also say the matter anti-reactor could be here, because you wouldn't want to put it inside your nacelle, and not having it in the saucer would free up space. So, you know, the matter antimatter reactor can reasonably be assumed to be there. This obviously had phasers and torpedoes, as we saw in the film. And I really like this design. It's supposed to be Prime, because this is actually the change point between Prime Timeline and the JJ verse. So, and this fits in quite well with what we've seen from the Constitution. And again, the Hermes and Saladin already made a single nacelle ship plausible. And we also did briefly in Next Generation see the Freedom class, which was a single nacelle ship, so no continuity errors or issues there. The whole notion that warp engines work in pairs is pretty ludicrous. That was just something that Roddenberry threw on long after the original series for other reasons, but it's been proven not to be a factor, so nothing to worry about there. And while I like the Saladin and the Hermes, I actually do like having this kind of engineering hull or shuttle bay deflector hull up top. It gives it a neat profile. So yeah, I like this ship. This was one of the first JJ verse ships. In fact, it might have been the first JJ verse ship that I bought in the Eagle Moss series, because I was kind of curious what it looked like. I mean, saucer and nacelle, but I was having a little time envisioning this upper part. And I like it. The saucer is metal, with the nacelle, of course, being the polymer plastic. And this little hull as well, polymer plastic. So it's got a reasonable weight, and it's got a reasonable size. Now, this isn't the XL. This is, you know, just the special edition, which is the L size, the large size. And I think it fits in really nicely with other Prime vessels. And it's always nice to have a unique and new ship from the TOS period, because we have so few. So few. They're free to do a Ptolemy tug if they'd like. I know it's not exactly frontline canon either, but I like the Ptolemy tug. So if they do it, please include the little cargo module or two. Just saying. So yeah, I thought I'd just mention the little Kelvin here, U.S.S. Kelvin. In the JJ verse, of course, it was destroyed in 2233 after being in service 8 years. So it'd been out there and back a bit. It's been kind of commented that it was a bit of a dingy ship, so we can assume that it had lots of deep space missions to kind of get it there, and not always in the best of shape, but it seemed to work fine. I like that in the film they kind of did 1930s or 1940s kind of Flash Gordon or whatever Buck Rogers aesthetic. It's kind of neat. At least the sound was. In the Prime universe, this would serve on, and it seems like it was either destroyed or decommissioned around 2244 or 2245, which would give it a very respectable service life of 19 to 20 years, which, you know, would be pretty much what you'd expect, especially if this was kind of a prototype or at least testing new technologies vessel. Obviously, the single nacelle did not work out, and they, you know, as they kept mostly doing 2 nacelles. But again, the freedom from Next Generation existed, so apparently wasn't a complete failure or flop. And again, I like the Eagle Moss model. I think it's a nicely made critter here. Has a good solid feel to it. It's a good size without being obnoxious. I kind of wish they did a standard size version, as I've said with a lot of these specials, just so it would fit in nicely with the other ships. But you get what you get, and there's not enough of these models of this ship out there, so beggars can't be choosers. Any questions or comments? Just want to talk about nerd stuff? Feel free to put it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate it if you could like, share, subscribe, and if you haven't, check out some of the other videos. This is Misha, and I will catch you next time.